your archer's hand be for gladness. And for even as he loves the arrow that flies, so he also loves the bow that is stable.
Okay, so I wouldn't normally do this, but my 3-year-old has been up since about 3 a.m. this morning. And while I sincerely hope that the mothers in this congregation who have partners that are also not mothers were able to enjoy sleeping in and breakfast in bed, etc., my poor partner is blessed with a husband who works every Mother's Day. And so while we often split duties on waking up, she was up with our 3-year-old for most of the night, and so I could be awake to preach this morning, so I hope you'll forgive me, all of me, when I say Happy Mother's Day to my wonderful wife, Amy. And I hope you'll forgive me, because I know that's embarrassing. And I want to say thank you for all you do for our family. And I want to say Happy Mother's Day to all the mothers here as well. I think it's important that we acknowledge that we have parents of all genders in our congregation. But I also want to acknowledge that often a greater burden of parenting falls on mothers. And so if that's you, I see you, and I'm grateful for you. It feels like a hard time to be a parent right now. Maybe it's always hard. I don't know. I've never been a parent before. But I don't mean in this instance because of the work that we have to do, though that's certainly not easy, but because of the world that we live in. Let me give you an example. This morning on the way to church, I was listening to NPR, and there was an interview with Dr. Lise von Sustern, who was talking about the psychological impact of climate change on children. There's a trial going on right now in Montana where 16 kids essentially are alleging that their state government has failed in its obligation, spelled out in the state constitution, to provide residents with a healthful environment. Dr. Van Susteren is serving as an expert witness in this trial, and she said, and this was right as I turned on the radio when I got in the car, kids are talking about their anger, they're talking about their fear, they're talking about their despair. They're talking about feelings of abandonment. And I didn't even know what it was about, but when the climate change topic came up, I was like, yeah, that makes sense. What kind of world are we leaving our kids? So for those of you who don't know, I just came back from a 5-month sabbatical last Sunday, and feels like I spent most of my sabbatical hiding under the covers in my bed, trying to avoid the news. I still want to do that, not because I'm afraid for me, but because I'm afraid for my children, for all of our children, for the children in this country and in our world right now. Have you ever felt like you wanted to hide for this reason? I don't think you have to be a mother or a parent to understand that feeling, that fear, but I'd be lying if I didn't say that looking at my children and imagining them in this world doesn't scare me a little bit and hit me to the core. And I wonder, what can our response be as people, as individuals, and as a community? People living in this country and in some ways so far away from the center of what's happening. I think the thing that shocked me first over this time that I was away was the slew of these anti-abortion laws. It's been a year now since we've been dealing with the prospect of and the massive change to abortion laws in this country. Last year, my Mother's Day sermon was about abortion rights. As you might remember, the Supreme Court decision was leaked that week, the one where Roe versus Wade was going to be overturned, making it possible for laws permitting abortion to be changed. And so it felt important to address that, particularly on Mother's Day. And in that time, there have been 24 states that have banned abortion or are working on banning it. Some have banned it totally. Some there are fewer restrictions in place, but this is huge. And there's a story that really got to me about a 10-year-old who was forced to travel from Indiana to Ohio to get an abortion. It makes me think these laws are not there to protect children. They're there to harm them. And I don't have to tell you that forcing people to have children doesn't do them any favors either, especially not in a country where our laws seem to defend rather than support these children and their parents after they have been born. But then I think there's something else that really got to me, and it's these anti-trans laws, which have broken my heart. They break my heart in part because they're causing families to live in fear. Bills have been passed throughout the country or in the process of being passed that restrict what can be taught about gender identity in schools, that make it so that teachers can override a student's pronoun request, that threaten the parental rights of parents who allow their children to transition, particularly if they're teens whose transition includes any medical interventions, which I will state is reversible and can literally be life-saving. And bills that threaten the rights of parents who are themselves transgender and receive gender-affirming care, and give parents who are not supportive of a child's gender identity the upper hand in divorce proceedings. And there are bills being proposed nationally that could make some of these things a felony. This is tough stuff, and it doesn't feel like protecting children to me, like loving children. Add this to our existing gun laws that mean children are dying and the children in cages at the border, not to mention the foster care system that often does more harm than good. The pediatric mental health crisis, both of which impact our state, the underfunding of public education, the lack of affordable childcare, the climate crisis. It really starts to feel like we are a society that doesn't value children unless they can give us something. See that recent child labor law in Ohio. And there are arguments by some that these anti-abortion laws mean more kids, specifically more babies and more white babies at that nice, rich white families can adopt. And the argument seems right there in plain sight. And while we talk about these laws being about controlling women and controlling trans people, I think there's another group that we're trying to control: children. Now, if you're a parent, you might be like, Reverend Otto, don't you have kids? You know, sometimes you have to tell them what to do, right? Make sure they eat, sleep, go to school, etc. And while all that's true, I want to examine both our story today from the Time for All Ages and our reading from today by Khalil Gibran. And just so we make sure we really hear these words, I'm going to read the beginning of that poem again with slightly more gender-inclusive language. Your children are not your children. They are children of life's longing for itself. They come through you, but not from you. And though they are with you, yet they belong not to you. They belong not to you. I think those are really powerful words we all need to hear, parent or not. There are a lot of things I love about this poem. One is that it was published in 1923, which I think shows that these ideas of children not belonging to us aren't some great new idea. I think sometimes us millennial parents are like, woo, we've done this. But no, this has been around for a while, this idea that we do not own our own children. It's not something new. Gibran basically claims that children belong ultimately to God. And for us Unitarian Universalists, that might mean a lot of different things, but I think of it as children being part of the divine, belonging to the sacredness which is life, not being owned by their parents or the adults in their society, but being truly separate and individual people. And I think it's pretty noteworthy that these words were written by a person who he himself wasn't a parent. Though apparently Gibran had a very difficult father who he was afraid of, so perhaps he had some experience being controlled by a parent. The thing about children and raising them is that we are not to be their controller, but their guiders, loving them unconditionally and protecting them. And I believe that we as a community and as a nation and as a world also have a duty to do this with the children that are among us, be they of our flesh or not, of our bodies or not, sharing our name or not, or any other characteristic that joins us to them. And so when I think about these laws, I think about how, in light of them, we can love and protect all children. Are you ready to choose love? Our Time for All Ages, which is especially a favorite in my house right now, almost makes me cry every time I read it and I hear the song that Moylan's mother sings to them. And I didn't even know there was actual tune until Martha sang it today, but the beginning words are, "Whatever you dream of, I believe you can be, from the stars in the sky to the fish in the sea." I think those are powerful words that we should be able to say to all of our children in this world. And I want to note that this book that was written by Kai Chen Tom wasn't written by a parent either. It was written by a non-binary trans woman who dedicates the book to her own parents. And she has the words, "Are you ready to choose love?" at the top of her website. So on Mother's Day, I think it's poignant to see this image in that book of a parent, of a mother loving her child and encouraging them to be whoever they will be, even if they are different, even if the other children don't understand. She learns that to protect her child is not the same as shielding them from the hard reactions of other children, but it is holding that child in their feelings and showering them with love and protection in those feelings, showing them that you are always on their side, but letting them be their own person. We believe in this congregation that all people have inherent worth and dignity. This is one of our principles. And as we explore this changing of our principles, we also remember that love is at the center. It's at the heart of all that we do and who we are. And as we are made aware and hear about these laws that harm children, that aren't protecting them, I want us to think about how we can advocate for children, how we can support the children in our community in being who they are, and in the country. People talk about children being our future, but I think we need to think about them as being people right now, people in the present, full people. And I'm talking about this on Mother's Day because the identity of mother, the identity of parent, is by definition linked to that relationship we have with children. But all of us have a responsibility to the children in our lives. During child dedications here, which is where we welcome new families that come to this church with their children and new children that come into our community, we like to talk about how important it is for us to be that village for that child, to support that child, to support not just the parents, but to help that child learn and become who they're going to be. So let us take this in, accept that inherent worth and dignity of all children as people. And let us remember on this day and all days the importance of truly bringing that love that we have for our own children beyond our walls, and support those children as people throughout our community and our world. For children are beautiful creations of love and of the divine, so let us treat them as such. May it be so, and let us say together, Amen. Amen. Now is the time in our service where we celebrate the bounty in our lives by sharing some of our financial resources with others. Today's offering will be shared with Families for Justice with Healing. Families for Justice as Healing is led by incarcerated women, formerly incarcerated women, and women with incarcerated loved ones. Our mission is to end the incarceration of women and girls. And I don't need to tell you that on Mother's Day and on this month when we celebrate that, this is our way of helping to support those people who are the children of these people. So if you're in the sanctuary, the ushers will come by with the baskets, and you can also donate. I think there's a link on the front of your order of service. And if you're online, we will put the link in the chat. This morning's offering will now be gratefully given and received.